The night was unusually quiet at the military base. The air was still, with only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of generators breaking the silence. Soldiers patrolled in pairs, alert yet tense, their eyes scanning the dark horizon. Something felt different tonight, though no one could say exactly what. A feeling of unease hung in the air, pressing down on everyone like a heavy, invisible weight. In the sky, faint lights appeared, tiny, moving dots that didn't belong. At first, the soldiers thought they were helicopters or distant planes, but as the lights grew closer, their movements became strange, unnatural. They darted in patterns that no human pilot could manage. They stopped suddenly, hovered, and then zipped away in the blink of an eye. The soldiers froze, gripping their rifles a little tighter. The base commander, a seasoned officer with lines of stress etched on his face, walked along the perimeter, barking orders to maintain calm. "Stay sharp, everyone. Keep your positions. Don't engage unless you're certain." His voice was steady, but the underlying tension was clear. Even he could feel the weight of something extraordinary approaching. Then it happened. The lights descended in the open field beyond the base. They revealed themselves as strange metallic shapes, unlike anything humans had seen. They glowed faintly, reflecting an eerie blue light across the ground. The soldiers instinctively raised their weapons, but hesitation held them back. These beings, whatever they were, moved with a grace and confidence that was almost mocking. The aliens did not speak, at least not in any way humans could hear. Instead, they projected images, holographic figures that mimicked the soldiers' movements, exaggerated and twisted in a mocking way. One soldier stumbled over his own feet, and immediately a projection appeared imitating him, mimicking his fear. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. The mocking was deliberate, calculated, and it cut deeper than bullets ever could. For a moment, fear threatened to paralyze the soldiers completely. Their training, which had prepared them for countless scenarios, felt useless. Nothing in their experience could prepare them for this. One soldier whispered under his breath, "We can't fight them. They're something else, something we don't understand." His voice trembled, betraying his growing panic. The commander's face remained stern, but inside he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew that hesitation could cost lives. He called for a tactical retreat to a more fortified position, but even that felt futile. The aliens seemed to anticipate every movement, shifting their forms and lights in a way that made human strategy look clumsy and predictable. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally as the standoff continued. The soldiers tried to communicate with each other, forming small groups to plan counterattacks. They fired weapons, launched flares, and even attempted to use experimental technology, but nothing worked. The aliens remained unscathed, their forms shifting and shimmering like liquid metal. The soldiers' morale began to crumble. Some sat on the ground, exhausted, staring at the glowing figures with a mixture of awe and despair. Others paced back and forth, muttering plans that were never executed. Every idea they had was met with failure. The aliens' ability to anticipate their every move made them appear invincible, and the soldiers could feel themselves losing hope with each passing minute. In the midst of the fear, there were whispers of disbelief. "Are we even real to them?" one soldier asked quietly. "Do they see us as threats at all, or are we just toys?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the aliens continued their silent taunting. It was as if the beings understood the deepest fears of the humans and were deliberately pushing them to the brink of despair. Despite the mocking, some soldiers refused to give up. A small group huddled together, whispering strategies and trying to remind each other of their training. They reminded themselves that surrender was not an option, that somewhere deep down, humans had the capacity to survive even the most impossible situations. Yet the question remained, how could they fight beings that seemed untouchable? Suddenly, one of the soldiers noticed something unusual. A small creature, no bigger than a medium dog, appeared near the edge of the field. At first, it seemed like a stray animal, lost and curious. But as it moved closer, it became clear that it was no ordinary creature. It had an energy, a presence that seemed almost purposeful. It stopped, looked at the aliens, and growled, a deep, resonant sound that carried across the field. The soldiers turned their attention to it, some raising their weapons, unsure of what to do. The alien projections flickered as if reacting to this unexpected appearance. For the first time, the mocking seemed uncertain. The soldiers exchanged looks of surprise and cautious hope. Could something so small and seemingly insignificant actually affect these beings? The commander, noticing the reaction, allowed himself a small nod. He whispered to his team, "Keep your distance, but watch closely. Don't underestimate it." The soldiers did as they were told, maintaining a safe perimeter while observing the creature's actions. As the night wore on, the creature's confidence grew. It began to move toward the aliens, barking and snapping with precision. The soldiers were stunned. Every movement seemed calculated, as if the creature understood the aliens in a way humans could not. For the first time since the aliens arrived, there was a shift in the air, a subtle change in power. The soldiers watched in awe, their fear slowly giving way to curiosity. Could this be the turning point? Could something as simple as instinct and courage, embodied in a small, determined creature, challenge the overwhelming power of the aliens? The thought was both terrifying and hopeful. For now the night remained tense. The aliens hovered, their holograms still flickering with subtle mocking gestures. But the confidence of the soldiers began to grow. They whispered among themselves, sharing small smiles and glances that carried more courage than words could express. Something had changed. Something had arrived that even the aliens could not ignore. And so the first night of the encounter ended with uncertainty, tension, and a spark of hope. The soldiers did not yet know the full story, nor did they understand the role that the small, brave creature would play, but they sensed that the impossible might just be possible, and for the first time they dared to imagine survival, not just for themselves, but for humanity. The night faded slowly into dawn, carrying with it the soft promise that even in the darkest, most mocking of moments, courage could appear from the most unexpected places. The soldiers had spent the night on edge, their nerves raw, their eyes fixed on the strange, glowing shapes that hovered beyond the base perimeter. Sleep had been impossible, replaced instead by a constant, gnawing tension. Every sound, the hum of machinery, the rustle of leaves, even distant animal calls made them flinch. By morning, exhaustion weighed on them like a heavy blanket, but there was no relief in sight. The aliens were still there, calm and unmoving, as if observing, testing, mocking. Attempts to engage the aliens had already proven futile. Bullets, grenades, even heavier artillery fired at the shimmering figures had no effect. The soldiers had begun to understand that conventional warfare would not work here. Their weapons bounced harmlessly off the alien bodies, which seemed to ripple and flow rather than break. Explosions created brilliant flashes of light, but the beings appeared unaffected, hovering higher or splitting into smaller forms to avoid contact. "What do we do now?" one soldier muttered, voice low and tense. He leaned against a barricade, rifle in hand, staring at the unyielding shapes. His uniform was smeared with dust and sweat, his face pale under the rising sun. "We can't even scratch them." The commander walked past him, his expression grim. "We adapt," he said simply, but even he sounded uncertain. The plan was unclear. The aliens seemed to anticipate every movement. Any strategy the humans devised was countered almost immediately, sometimes before it could even be carried out. It was as if the aliens could read their thoughts. The alien holograms became more aggressive in their mockery. They copied every minor mistake the soldiers made, exaggerating movements and displaying them in grotesque, taunting forms. One soldier tripped over a loose cable, and immediately, a projection appeared, staggering and tumbling in slow motion, laughter echoing in some strange, synthetic tone. The soldiers' morale dipped further. What kind of enemy could not only withstand their weapons but also find amusement in their fear? Despite their failures, the soldiers tried to fight back. Teams were sent to flank the aliens, hoping to confuse or overwhelm them. Drones were launched to gather intelligence, cameras zooming in on the alien forms, but the data proved almost useless. The beings' technology was beyond comprehension. They moved too fast, disappeared, or split into multiple figures, leaving the humans disoriented. Hours passed like this. Sweat poured down faces, hands ached from gripping weapons, and minds raced with fear and frustration. One soldier knelt by a communication device, attempting to contact command headquarters. "We need support," he said, voice trembling slightly. "We can't handle this alone. Our weapons aren't doing anything." Static answered him at first, then a calm, collected voice. "Hold your position. Backup is on the way." But the reassurance did little to calm the soldiers. Every moment of waiting felt like an eternity. As if sensing their hesitation, the aliens became bolder. Some hovered lower now, moving closer to the soldiers' barricades, their glowing forms twisting and morphing in ways that seemed almost playful, though it was a cruel kind of play. They emitted sounds, strange vibrations that resonated through the soldiers' bodies. It was not language, but it communicated dominance, control, and mockery all at once. One soldier, frustrated beyond measure, fired his weapon directly at the nearest alien. The bullet passed harmlessly through it. The alien flickered and then replicated the soldier's stance, mimicking his attempt to attack with exaggerated clumsiness. The effect was surreal and terrifying. It was as if the aliens were saying, "You are insignificant. You are weak. You cannot touch us." Another soldier tried a grenade, hoping the explosion might drive them back. The device detonated in a brilliant flash of light, but the aliens simply dispersed, splitting into smaller forms before reassembling seconds later. Laughter, synthetic, mocking, echoed faintly through the air. The soldiers were beginning to feel that their every effort was useless, that their training, skill, and courage might never be enough. In a quiet corner of the base, a group of soldiers huddled together, whispering desperately. "We need a new plan," one said. "We can't fight them head-on. We have to think differently." They shared ideas, traps, distractions, trying to exploit weaknesses, but each suggestion seemed to crumble under the weight of impossibility. Nothing they tried had worked, and every failed attempt added to the sense of despair. Amid the chaos, the small creature from the previous night remained near the edge of the field, watching silently. It did not flinch in the face of the aliens. Its presence, subtle at first, began to draw the soldiers' attention. One of them whispered, "Look at it. It's not scared at all." Another shook his head in disbelief. "It's just an animal. What can it do?" But the creature's instincts were sharp. It moved with precision, scanning the alien forms, observing patterns, and testing reactions. Occasionally, it barked or growled, small movements that seemed insignificant at first but hinted at intelligence and courage beyond expectation. The soldiers began to notice a change. When the creature acted, the aliens paused, flickered, and sometimes retreated slightly. For the first time, the humans saw the beings hesitate. The commander, observing this quietly from a distance, realized something critical. "It's learning them," he said to no one in particular. "It's figuring out how they move, how they react." The soldiers, tired and desperate, clung to this small thread of hope. It was fragile, but it was something they had not felt in hours. A sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to fight back. The day stretched on, tension giving way to exhaustion. Soldiers took turns resting while keeping a careful watch, always alert, always wary. Each new movement from the aliens was met with anxiety and fear. But now, amid the despair, curiosity, and cautious optimism began to emerge. The aliens, sensing that their usual tactics were not as effective, intensified their displays. Holograms projected scenes of the soldiers' own fears, their families, and memories, twisting them into haunting images. The intention was clear: to demoralize, to break their spirit. Some soldiers turned away, covering their eyes, struggling to maintain composure. Others stared, fists clenched, silently vowing not to succumb. But the small creature remained unfazed. It moved closer, sniffing the air, observing patterns in the aliens' behavior. Every time the humans attempted a strategy, it reacted, sometimes blocking their path, sometimes drawing the aliens' attention. Slowly, the soldiers realized that the creature's instincts were giving them opportunities. Brief, small windows where the aliens' superiority faltered. One soldier, eyes wide with realization, whispered, "It's helping us," without even knowing it. Another nodded, determination returning. They began to coordinate with the creature, careful not to expose themselves fully but using its actions as a guide. The shift was subtle, but it was there, a chance to change the course of this impossible battle. By evening, the alien forms began to withdraw slightly, testing the humans' reactions. The soldiers, still cautious, realized they were no longer completely powerless. They had discovered a small advantage. one that did not rely on weapons or technology but on instinct, courage, and observation. The morale, once shattered, started to rise again. Exhaustion had not disappeared and fear still lingered, but now it was balanced with hope. The soldiers whispered among themselves, sharing quiet words of encouragement, small smiles that reflected growing confidence. The aliens, though still dangerous and mocking, had shown a vulnerability, something that humans could exploit if they acted wisely. As night fell again, the tension returned, but it was different this time. The humans had learned that bravery and intelligence were not limited to themselves. Allies could appear in unexpected forms, and strength could be found in instinct and courage as much as in weapons. The soldiers settled into positions, eyes scanning the glowing shapes with renewed focus. They did not know what the next day would bring, but they understood that surrender was not an option. Something had changed in the balance of power, however slightly, and they were determined to explore every opportunity. The small creature curled up nearby, alert even as it rested. Its presence had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, courage could appear where least expected. The humans had survived the day, battered but alive, and the story of their struggle of fear, determination, and unexpected allies was only beginning. The night air was still but no longer heavy with despair. A quiet resolve settled over the base. The soldiers had learned an important lesson. Even when facing a seemingly invincible enemy, there were always possibilities. And sometimes, the most unlikely hero could make all the difference. The next morning arrived with a strange sense of anticipation. The soldiers, still exhausted from the previous day's events, moved carefully through the base. The air was tense but not as heavy as before. Something had shifted overnight. There was an unspoken sense that today might be different, though no one could say exactly why. The small creature, which had been quietly observing the aliens, seemed restless. Its ears twitched at every sound, its eyes scanning the horizon, always alert. It was no longer just a presence at the edge of the field. It moved with purpose now, circling the perimeter, sniffing the air, growling low when it sensed movement. The soldiers watched it closely, realizing that the tiny creature had become an unexpected guide, leading their attention to the patterns in the aliens' movements. The aliens, still hovering and glowing, seemed to notice the change in behavior. Their holographic forms flickered with irritation as they attempted to mimic the soldiers' cautious movements. Mocking gestures became more aggressive, projecting exaggerated versions of the soldiers' exhaustion, fear, and doubt. It was a calculated psychological assault meant to crush human morale. Despite this, the soldiers held their positions. They had learned over the past day that panic was dangerous. The more they feared, the more the aliens seemed to dominate. So they waited, observing the small creature, trying to learn from its instincts. They noticed that whenever it moved forward, the aliens hesitated. Whenever it barked or made a sudden move, they flinched, their glowing forms quivering. Suddenly, movement came from behind the soldiers' defensive line. More small creatures appeared, larger this time and clearly trained. The soldiers blinked in disbelief. These were no ordinary animals. They were military working dogs, released strategically by command during the night in a quiet, unannounced operation. They moved in formation, alert and disciplined, yet fearless. Their presence shifted the atmosphere immediately. The aliens, initially calm, froze at the sight. Their mocking gestures faltered. The soldiers could see hesitation for the first time. The holograms flickered, stuttered, and the forms rippled as if the aliens were unsure how to respond. The dogs did not hesitate. They charged forward, barking and growling, moving as if they understood the gravity of the battle. The soldiers watched in awe. One whispered, "They're attacking?" Another shook his head in disbelief. "How? They're just dogs." But it quickly became clear that these dogs were more than ordinary animals. Their movements were coordinated. They avoided alien devices that emitted strange pulses, moving in and out of range, and they targeted the alien scouts with surprising precision. The commander barked orders, his voice firm, but there was no fear now, only determination. "Support the dogs. Move with them. Watch their patterns." The soldiers began to coordinate, realizing that the dogs' instincts provided a new advantage. They could distract, confuse, and challenge the aliens in ways that weapons never could. The first direct clash occurred near the base's perimeter fence. A small group of alien scouts hovered too close to the dogs. The animals barked and lunged simultaneously, teeth flashing, their speed almost unbelievable. The aliens tried to retaliate with pulses of energy, but the dogs dodged with instinctive precision. Some of the alien forms flickered and split, unable to maintain cohesion under the unexpected pressure. The soldiers joined in carefully, following the dog's lead rather than charging blindly. They fired only when there was a clear opening, using small, targeted strikes. The combination of human strategy and canine instinct began to create real results. Aliens that had seemed untouchable now wavered. Their mocking gestures became erratic, less coordinated. For the first time, the humans sensed control returning. The battle expanded as more dogs joined. Each dog seemed attuned to the aliens' movements, reacting faster than any human could. They barked, circled, and intercepted attacks, creating openings that allowed soldiers to strike more effectively. One soldier, crouched behind a barricade, watched in amazement as a dog leaped over a low alien device and bit at its core. Sparks flew. The alien form flickered, collapsed momentarily, and reformed, but the display alone gave the humans hope. The aliens, now clearly frustrated, changed tactics. Their forms shimmered violently, projecting larger, more aggressive holograms. They attempted to intimidate the soldiers and dogs, creating illusions of massive attacks, walls of light, and terrifying images meant to confuse. But the dogs did not falter. Their instincts guided them around the illusions. They barked, leaped, and distracted the holograms, forcing the aliens to respond to the real threat instead of the illusion. The soldiers began to coordinate more actively with the dogs. They noticed patterns in the aliens' defensive responses and used them to their advantage. A team would draw attention while another team, following the dog's guidance, flanked the alien forms. Slowly but surely, the humans began to reclaim control. Each small victory was a boost to morale, a spark of courage in the midst of fear. Amid the chaos, there were moments of pure human emotion. Soldiers encouraged one another, shouting warnings, giving instructions, or simply cheering the dogs on. Exhaustion, fear, and determination blended together. A young soldier, trembling from adrenaline, whispered to a teammate, "I can't believe this, the dogs. They're actually doing it." His voice carried both disbelief and hope. The commander observed quietly, noting every movement. He realized that the dogs had become more than allies. They were the key to the humans' survival. Their instincts, courage, and fearlessness balanced the humans' strategic thinking. Together, humans and dogs formed a combination that even the technologically superior aliens struggled to counter. Hours passed in a blur of coordinated attacks and evasive maneuvers. The aliens attempted to retreat, regroup, and reform their holograms, but the dogs continued to pressure them relentlessly. The soldiers adapted quickly, understanding that patience, observation, and trust in the dog's instincts were as important as weapons or technology. By late afternoon, the battle had shifted dramatically. Where the humans had once been on the defensive, now they pressed forward. The aliens were no longer completely in control. Their forms flickered more frequently, their movements less certain. The mocking gestures that had dominated the first 2 days were replaced by frustration, confusion, and brief moments of retreat. The soldiers cheered quietly when they saw the first alien form collapse under combined human and canine effort. It was not a total victory, but it was a symbol, a proof that the impossible could be challenged. The dogs continued to fight bravely, their energy tireless despite the heat, dust, and chaos of battle. Even as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the battlefield, the soldiers did not stop. They moved in careful coordination, protecting the dogs, using every opportunity to push the aliens back. The morale of the base soared. The fear that had dominated the previous days was slowly replaced with determination, courage, and hope. By nightfall, the aliens had retreated slightly, hovering at a safer distance, but still watching. Their dominance was no longer absolute. The soldiers, though weary and battered, felt a renewed sense of strength. The dogs had arrived, changing the course of the battle entirely. They were no longer facing an unbeatable enemy. They were facing a challenge that could be met with courage, strategy, and unexpected allies. The commander gathered his team, acknowledging the dogs' contribution with quiet respect. "They've shown us the way," he said. "Sometimes the smallest, bravest beings can make the biggest difference. Keep your focus, protect each other, and trust in what we've learned today. We can survive this." The soldiers nodded, their spirits lifted. They shared quiet smiles, whispered encouragements, and offered gentle pats to the dogs who had become the heroes of the day. For the first time in hours, there was laughter, relief, and genuine hope. The night settled over the base, calm but watchful. The aliens were still there, but their mocking demeanor had weakened. The humans and their canine allies had found a rhythm, a strategy, and a courage that could challenge the invaders. As the soldiers rested, their minds racing with what had just happened, one thought was clear: the battle was far from over. But they had discovered an unexpected power, a force that no technology or hologram could match: bravery, instinct, and loyalty. The dogs had arrived, and with them a new chapter in the struggle had begun. The night air carried a sense of cautious optimism. The soldiers knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time they felt they were not powerless. They had allies, courage, and a strategy born from instinct, observation, and trust. The fight was far from over, but the impossible was no longer beyond reach. The morning sun rose over the military base with a muted glow, casting long shadows across the field where the battle had begun. Soldiers moved quietly but with purpose, their exhaustion evident but overshadowed by renewed determination. The events of the previous day had changed something within them. They were no longer paralyzed by fear. They were aware now that even the most terrifying enemy could be challenged when humans and their allies worked together. The dogs, who had become the symbol of hope and courage, were already active. They patrolled the perimeter, noses low, ears alert, scanning for any sign of alien movement. Each soldier watched them with a mixture of awe and careful attention. It was clear that the animals had become more than helpers. They were guides, scouts, and frontline defenders all in one. The small creature from the very first night, the one that had begun this chain of events, now ran alongside larger dogs, leading them toward areas where the aliens had been most aggressive. The aliens, still hovering in the field beyond the barricades, were no longer calm or mocking. They moved more cautiously, as if aware that the humans and their dogs had found an unpredictable factor. The holographic projections flickered, uncertain. Some forms wavered, rippled, and split, suggesting the aliens were trying to anticipate a threat they could not fully understand. The soldiers gathered in small groups, whispering strategy. They had learned from the previous day that direct confrontation often failed, but combined with the dogs' instincts, coordinated attacks could create opportunities. One group would draw attention while the dogs and another human team flanked the aliens. Another group stayed in reserve, ready to intercept or cover retreat if needed. For the first time, the humans were not reacting. They were planning, calculating, and using what they had learned from the dogs. The small team that observed the dogs closely noticed patterns in the aliens' movements. A flicker here, a pause there, a delay when responding to a particular type of distraction. These patterns became the foundation of a new strategy. The first engagement of the day began near a small ridge on the outskirts of the base. A squad of soldiers moved quietly, using the ridge as cover. The dogs were positioned ahead, moving silently through tall grass, ready to spring into action. The aliens, sensing movement, sent scouts closer, their glowing forms hovering just above the field. Suddenly, the dogs leaped forward in unison, barking and snapping. The aliens reacted instinctively, splitting into multiple forms to evade. One soldier fired a calculated shot at an opening created by the dog's attack. Sparks flew as the alien form flickered but did not disappear entirely. It was a small victory, but a critical one. It proved that the combination of human strategy and canine instinct could create results where human weapons alone had failed. Other soldiers quickly joined the effort. They moved in tandem with the dogs, covering flanks and watching for any signs of the aliens regrouping. The air was filled with barking, the hum of alien energy pulses, and shouted instructions from soldiers coordinating their movements. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Each human and dog knew their role, reacting with precision and timing. The aliens responded with more aggressive tactics. Holograms flickered into terrifying illusions, projecting massive attacks, walls of energy, and even distorted versions of the soldiers' own fears. Yet the dogs did not hesitate. They navigated through the illusions, barking and lunging at real targets, forcing the aliens to respond to reality instead of deception. The soldiers followed carefully, using the openings created by the animals' bravery. One soldier, crouched behind a barricade, watched a dog leap over a glowing alien device and bite at its core. Sparks and ripples of energy spread across the field. The alien form flickered violently, then reassembled, weaker than before. The soldier couldn't help but whisper, "We can do this. We really can." Around him, others nodded quietly, their fear replaced by determination. The battle continued for hours, each engagement reinforcing a growing sense of unity between humans and dogs. Soldiers learned to trust the animals, to anticipate their movements, and to act as one. Even the commander, observing from a high vantage point, recognized that the dogs were not just tools. They were heroes. Their courage inspired the humans to push harder, think faster, and take calculated risks that they had never dared before. By midday, the humans had begun to reclaim territory previously dominated by the aliens. The glowing forms wavered more frequently, their holographic projections faltering. The aliens' once confident mockery was replaced by signs of frustration. They attempted new maneuvers, moving in more erratic patterns, but the combination of human strategy and canine instinct countered almost every attempt. The soldiers' morale surged. Quiet words of encouragement and gentle pats for the dog spread through the ranks. Laughter and shouts of triumph mingled with the sounds of battle, small but powerful reminders that fear did not control them. Every time a dog disrupted an alien form, every time a soldier used that distraction to land a precise strike, it became proof that courage and cleverness could challenge even the most powerful enemy. The aliens, realizing that their superiority was slipping, tried a desperate tactic. They formed a larger, combined holographic projection that shimmered with intense light, attempting to intimidate the humans into retreat. For a moment, the soldiers froze. It was overwhelming, dazzling, and disorienting. But the dogs did not falter. They barked, lunged, and circled, drawing attention to weak points in the projection. Soldiers immediately acted on the openings. They moved with purpose, targeting the gaps and exploiting the momentary confusion. One by one, the alien forms flickered and weakened, showing vulnerability for the first time. It was a turning point, and the humans sensed it instinctively. Courage surged in their hearts, fear fading into determination. The battle pushed forward into the late afternoon. The aliens attempted to retreat, but were repeatedly intercepted by coordinated squads of soldiers and dogs. Each successful strike built momentum. Each display of bravery, whether from human or dog, reinforced the idea that even the seemingly invincible could be challenged. The commander called for a temporary regroup, allowing soldiers to rest briefly and reassess their strategy. The dogs stayed vigilant, noses to the ground, ears twitching, alert to the faintest sign of movement. The humans shared water, adjusted their positions, and quietly encouraged one another. They were tired, yes, but stronger than they had been the previous day. They had discovered the power of coordination, courage, and trust. As the sun began to set, casting long orange shadows over the battlefield, the aliens' forms shimmered and faltered. They were no longer advancing with the confidence they had shown during the first days of the invasion. Instead, they hovered cautiously, as if uncertain how to respond to the humans' new tactics. The once unshakable mockery had vanished, replaced by hesitation and frustration. The soldiers, standing tall and alert, recognized the shift. They had found a rhythm, a way to fight back where before they had only survived. The dogs remained the center of this strategy, their instincts guiding the humans, their courage inspiring every move. Together, humans and dogs had transformed the battlefield, turning what once seemed impossible into a challenge that could be met. By nightfall, the humans had regained significant ground. The aliens hovered at a distance, regrouping, but their dominance was no longer absolute. Soldiers and dogs alike rested in small groups, sharing quiet moments of relief. They had learned a crucial lesson: unity, courage, and trust, sometimes from the most unexpected allies, could shift the balance of power. The night air carried a sense of cautious optimism. The humans were exhausted, but hope had returned. They knew the battle was far from over, yet they now understood that even the most terrifying enemy could be challenged with strategy, instinct, and bravery. The commander looked over the field, nodding in quiet satisfaction. Today was proof, he said to no one in particular. We are not helpless. We are not powerless. We have allies, courage, and a plan. We will survive. We will fight back. And with that, the soldiers settled for the night, alert but confident. The dogs curled up nearby, ever watchful, their presence a symbol of bravery and hope. The humans had survived another day, but more importantly, They had discovered the strength that comes from unity, trust, and the courage to act even in the face of overwhelming odds. The stage was set for the next day. The battle was far from over, but humans and dogs had shown that even the strongest enemies could be challenged when courage and strategy came together. The aliens would learn soon enough that mocking human soldiers was no longer enough. The tide had begun to turn. The sun had barely risen when the soldiers gathered quietly, tension still thick in the air but determination burning stronger than ever. The previous days had taught them one vital lesson. Fear could no longer dominate their actions. They had seen the aliens' superiority falter under the dogs' instinctive attacks and their own strategic planning. Today, they knew, would be a day to fight back fully, not just survive. The dogs were already active, moving like shadows across the perimeter. Their ears twitched at every sound, their noses low, scanning the area for any sign of alien movement. Their small forms seemed almost ordinary, but the soldiers had learned to respect their courage and precision. These animals were no longer just companions, they were heroes, guides, and the heart of a new kind of strategy. The aliens, hovering in the open field, seemed to sense the change. Their once perfectly synchronized forms flickered more frequently. Holographic images of human soldiers appeared, twisted into mocking poses, but the confidence behind these projections had diminished. The aliens had begun to recognize that the humans and their dogs were not reacting randomly. They were learning, adapting and coordinating with surprising efficiency. The commander, standing on the ridge with binoculars, spoke quietly but firmly. "We move as one. Watch the dogs. Follow their lead. Use openings, stay sharp, and don't give them a single chance to recover." His eyes scanned the field, noting the aliens' hesitant movements. This was the moment to act decisively. The first coordinated attack began near the southern perimeter. Soldiers moved silently through low grass, covering each other while the dogs spread out ahead. Their movements fluid and instinctive. The aliens reacted instantly, sending scouts forward in what appeared to be an attempt to intimidate the humans. Then the dogs lunged. Barking, snapping, weaving through the alien forms, they created chaos that the aliens could not predict. The soldiers followed, striking with precision whenever the dogs forced the alien forms to falter. A particularly large holographic scout flickered violently as a dog leaped onto it, teeth clashing with the glowing surface. Sparks erupted, and the alien form wavered, disoriented. The soldiers pressed their advantage. They had learned to anticipate the aliens' reactions, using the dog's instinctive actions to guide their own movements. Every distraction, every flinch from the aliens became an opportunity. One team covered the dogs while another flanked, coordinating movements that seemed impossible just days ago. The air was filled with barking, shouts of strategy, and the hum of alien energy pulses. Hours passed with relentless pressure. The aliens attempted to regroup, creating larger holographic forms and waves of energy designed to push the humans back. But the dogs were undeterred. They moved through the chaos, focused, fearless, and precise. Soldiers adapted to the illusions, targeting real threats while the dogs disrupted the alien formations. Together, humans and dogs were becoming a force the aliens had not anticipated. The turning point came in the middle of the day. A particularly aggressive alien formation advanced, attempting to overwhelm the soldiers with a wall of energy. The dogs split into two coordinated groups. One group drew attention to the aliens' flank, barking and circling while the other group moved in for precise attacks. The soldiers followed, firing at the openings created by the animals. Sparks and flashes filled the field as the alien forms wavered and faltered. The soldiers shouted, moved, and dodged with renewed energy. Every successful strike, every disruption by the dogs was a small victory that strengthened their confidence. Fear was replaced by determination. The humans realized that courage was not about the absence of fear, but about acting despite it. The dogs embodied this principle perfectly, showing no hesitation even in the face of seemingly invincible foes. By afternoon, the aliens were retreating. Their movements had become erratic, less coordinated. Mocking holograms flickered inconsistently, showing frustration instead of dominance. The soldiers noticed the change and pressed forward, careful but unrelenting. The dogs led the way, moving instinctively to intercept alien scouts and creating openings for precise human attacks. One soldier, crouched behind a barricade, watched a dog leap onto an alien projection. Sparks and energy rippled across the field. The alien faltered, then collapsed briefly before trying to reassemble. The soldier could not hide his awe. "Look at them," he whispered. "They're unstoppable." Around him, others nodded, understanding that the dogs were the key to their success. The commander called for continuous coordination. "Keep the pressure. Don't let them recover. Follow the dogs and hit every opening. We are pushing them back for the first time." His voice was calm but firm, conveying the confidence that had begun to spread through the soldiers. They trusted his judgment and, more importantly, trusted in the dogs that had changed the tide of battle. As the day wore on, the humans regained territory that had been lost in the initial alien assault. Barricades once thought vulnerable were now secure, and soldiers moved with a rhythm that combined strategy, instinct, and trust in their canine allies. The aliens attempted to counter, projecting massive illusions, generating energy barriers and sending waves of light designed to intimidate. Yet every tactic was met with coordinated human and dog response. The soldiers cheered quietly whenever a strike succeeded. Small moments of victory, like the collapse of an alien form or the dogs intercepting a scout, were celebrated with whispers, pats on backs, and gentle words to the dogs who had risked themselves to protect them. Morale soared, fear diminished, and determination became the driving force behind every action. By late afternoon, the aliens were in full retreat. Their movements were hesitant, flickering, and uncertain. The mocking that had dominated the early days was gone, replaced by a desperate attempt to regroup. The soldiers, following the dog's lead, pressed the advantage. They moved methodically, coordinating attacks that exploited every weakness, no matter how small. The commander surveyed the field, nodding quietly. "We've done what no one thought possible," he said. "We've turned the tide. But stay alert. This isn't over." The soldiers understood. The aliens were still dangerous, but the balance of power had shifted. Humans and dogs were no longer on the defensive. They were leading the fight. As night approached, the aliens began to retreat further, hovering at a distance where their attacks were less effective. The soldiers regrouped, sharing water, adjusting positions, and taking brief moments of rest. The dogs curled up near their human companions, still alert, ears twitching at every sound. Their bravery had inspired the soldiers, proving that courage, instinct, and loyalty could overcome even the most technologically advanced foe. The battlefield was quiet now, but the energy remained. Soldiers whispered quietly, acknowledging the dog's role in the victories of the day. Laughter returned, small but significant, blending with the soft sounds of the night. They had learned that courage was contagious, that determination could inspire action, and that the most unlikely heroes could change the course of a battle. The commander gathered his team one last time before darkness fully fell. "Today we showed them we are not powerless. We showed them that even the strongest can be challenged when we fight together. Humans and dogs, our courage, instincts, and unity have made the difference. Remember this. Never underestimate any ally and never doubt your own strength." The soldiers nodded, understanding the truth in his words. The dogs, their small but mighty allies, had taught them lessons about bravery, trust, and loyalty that no textbook or training exercise could ever convey. The humans had survived, and more than that, they had proven that courage and coordination could turn fear into strength. The night settled over the base with a calm that felt earned, not given. The aliens were still out there, but the humans no longer feared them as an invincible force. They had discovered a new power, one born from unity, trust, and the courage to act in the face of overwhelming odds. The soldiers and dogs rested, vigilant yet confident. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The humans had learned that strength comes not just from weapons or numbers, but from courage, strategy, and the most unexpected allies. The dogs had arrived when hope seemed lost, and together, humans and animals had begun to rewrite the course of the battle. As the stars emerged in the night sky, the soldiers looked toward the horizon. They were tired, yes, but their spirits were high. The aliens had been pushed back, their dominance challenged, and for the first time, humans felt that victory, while not complete, was possible. The day had proven that courage, unity, and the right allies could overcome even the most impossible odds. The night was quiet, but charged with possibility. Tomorrow the battle would continue, but the humans and dogs had shown that fear was no longer a weapon the aliens could use against them. Together they had become a force that could resist, fight back, and ultimately survive. The sun rose slowly over the battlefield, casting soft light across the base. For the first time in days, the soldiers could move without immediate fear of attack. The aliens were still present, hovering at a distance, but their confidence had been shattered. What had once seemed like an unstoppable force now hesitated, watched carefully, and retreated when humans advanced. The tide had changed and everyone could feel it. The soldiers moved carefully through the field, checking barricades, tending to minor damages, and maintaining vigilance. Even though the aliens had been pushed back, there was no room for overconfidence. Every soldier understood that the threat was still real. But unlike before, there was now a sense of control, a feeling that they could survive and even fight back if necessary. The dogs were already active, moving among the soldiers, sniffing the ground, and staying alert for any signs of alien movement. They were more than companions. They were warriors in their own right. Every bark, every precise movement, every alert glance reminded the soldiers that courage could come in small, unexpected forms. They had become the heart and soul of this defense, guiding the humans with instincts no technology could match. The commander walked among his team, observing the aftermath of the previous day's struggle. His expression was calm, but his eyes held pride. "Look at them," he said quietly, gesturing toward the dogs. "They showed us what bravery really is. They taught us to act even when the odds seemed impossible, and we followed. That is why we survived, why we can continue to fight." The soldiers nodded, many of them kneeling to gently pat the dogs, whispering words of gratitude. The bond between human and dog had deepened, forged in the heat of battle in moments of fear and triumph alike. It was a partnership built on trust, instinct, and shared courage. No one doubted that without these animals, the outcome of the past few days could have been far worse. Small groups moved through the field, keeping watch while others attended to minor injuries and checked equipment. Soldiers whispered quietly, sharing thoughts about what had happened, about the lessons learned. One said, "We couldn't have done this without them. The dogs, they were fearless. Every time I thought we'd lose, they made it possible to fight back." Another nodded. "It's true. They're more than animals now, they're heroes." The aliens, meanwhile, remained hovering at the edge of the field, no longer advancing. Their holographic forms flickered sporadically, as if unsure how to respond to the humans' newfound strength. The mocking gestures, once constant and overwhelming, had vanished. Frustration, hesitation, and confusion were evident in every movement. The soldiers observed quietly, understanding that the aliens' psychological hold had been broken. By midday, reconnaissance drones were sent out cautiously to monitor the aliens. Data came back showing that they were retreating further, unable to coordinate effective attacks and reacting defensively whenever humans or dogs moved forward. It was clear. The aliens had learned that humans were no longer easy prey. They had underestimated the power of courage, unity, and instinct, the very things that no weapon or technology could replicate. The soldiers regrouped at the command center, quietly planning their next steps. Even though the immediate threat had been reduced, they knew that vigilance was essential. The commander spoke to his team, his voice steady and resolute. "We have survived this long because we did not give in to fear. We have won every small battle by trusting in each other and in the dogs, but we must remain alert. The fight is not over, though now the advantage is ours." The soldiers exchanged looks, understanding the truth in his words. The dogs moved among them, calm but alert, eyes scanning for movement, ears twitching at every sound. Their presence was a constant reminder that courage was not only human, and that bravery could manifest in unexpected forms. Every soldier felt a quiet gratitude toward these animals, who had become the cornerstone of their survival and success. As the afternoon passed, the humans began to reclaim more ground. Barricades that had been damaged were repaired, defensive positions strengthened, and supply lines secured. The aliens were no longer advancing. They were watching, hesitating, unsure how to act. Every step forward was calculated, careful, but increasingly confident. The soldiers were no longer merely defending, they were asserting control over the battlefield. The commander called a short meeting with the senior soldiers. "We've seen the difference courage makes," he said. "We've seen how instinct and loyalty can overcome fear and mockery. Our dogs have shown us that bravery is contagious. As we move forward, remember this. Our strength is not just in weapons or numbers, it is in unity, trust, and courage. Humans and dogs together are unstoppable." The soldiers nodded silently, many kneeling to check on the dogs, offering quiet words of thanks. They had learned that courage is not a single act but a combination of small choices, repeated over time, sustained by trust and teamwork. Each dog had played a role, every soldier had contributed, and together they had changed the course of an overwhelming threat. By evening, the aliens had retreated almost completely. Their forms flickered in the distance, no longer bold or mocking. The soldiers observed quietly, keeping a cautious watch but feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. They had survived, fought back, and proved that even the most advanced and terrifying enemy could be challenged through courage and unity. The dogs, tired but alert, remained among the soldiers. They had become the heroes of the battle, symbols of bravery that transcended size, species, or expectation. Every bark, every precise movement, every instinctive leap had contributed to the human's survival. The soldiers now recognized the profound lesson these animals had taught them. Bravery and loyalty could turn despair into hope, and the unexpected could be the key to victory. Night fell over the battlefield, calm and quiet for the first time in days. The soldiers and dogs rested together, eyes scanning the horizon, ears alert to every sound. The aliens had not been completely defeated, but their dominance had been shattered, and their confidence broken. The humans had survived and learned that courage, unity, and trust were more powerful than any weapon or technology. In quiet moments, soldiers spoke softly to one another. "We couldn't have done this alone," one whispered. The dogs, "They saved us more than once," another nodded. "They were fearless. And we followed them. That's what made the difference." The bond between human and animal had grown unbreakable, forged in the fire of fear and battle. The commander observed the field, nodding with satisfaction. "Today we learned that no enemy is unbeatable," he said quietly. "We learned that even in the darkest moments, courage can emerge from the most unexpected places. And we learned that trust, unity, and instinct, human and animal together, can turn despair into victory." As the night deepened, the soldiers settled into a careful rest. The dogs remained alert, protective, and watchful, their presence a constant reminder of bravery and loyalty. The humans had survived an ordeal that had seemed impossible, not through weapons alone but through courage, coordination, and unexpected allies. The field was quiet now, but alive with lessons learned. Every soldier understood that fear could be overcome, that courage was contagious, and that unity was the key to survival. They had seen the power of instinct and loyalty in action, and they had been inspired to act with the same bravery. By dawn, the base was secure. Soldiers moved with quiet confidence, maintaining positions and observing the distant aliens, who remained hesitant and uncertain. The humans had reclaimed control over their own fate, proving that even against overwhelming odds, survival and success were possible through courage, strategy, and unexpected allies. The commander addressed his team one final time, voice steady and filled with quiet pride. "We have survived, we have fought back, and we have learned the true meaning of courage. Remember this day, not because of the enemies we faced, but because of the bravery we witnessed and the strength we found within ourselves, and in the dogs who fought alongside us. This is how hope survives, how courage triumphs, and how even the impossible can be overcome." The soldiers nodded, a quiet determination settling in their hearts. The dogs curled up nearby, alert even as they rested, their loyalty and courage recognized by every human who had witnessed it. Together, humans and dogs had faced fear, defied an overwhelming enemy, and emerged stronger. The battle was far from over, but the lesson was clear. Courage, unity, and loyalty were forces more powerful than fear or technology. The stars shone over the field, calm and peaceful. The humans and their canine allies had survived the impossible, proving that bravery could come from the most unexpected places. And as the night carried on, the soldiers understood that their story, the story of fear, courage, and unlikely heroes, was one that would endure long after the battle had ended.